We started this series, and I showed you the first week, if you were here. If you missed it, you'll have to go back and watch. It's online. But I showed you a picture of the largest fish I've ever caught. And last week, well, it was the largest pike I've ever caught. So last week, Pastor Joel, who does not fish, showed you a fake picture of a fish that I want to catch. So this week I said I will show you the picture of the largest fish I ever caught. Are you ready for it? And if you're not a movie fan, Jaws is its 50-year anniversary. So this is fake, okay? But my other one, my pike, was real. But I had to, it's like game on with Joel. He's putting up the fake one. So, yeah, I'd love to do that someday. That'd be fantastic. It's kind of funny because I've actually never been able to catch anything deep sea fishing. I went one time. I was on a missions trip to Honduras. We used to have a missions there. We raised up the locals and handed it off. But I was in the Bay Islands in Honduras. And I thought, this is a great time. I'm going to go out. The groupers were biting at the time, and I said, let's go fishing. In fact, if you don't know what a grouper is, they're big fish, and this is an actual picture, size compared to the diver. And they were biting, and I was hoping to catch a big one. Maybe not that big, but I was looking for a big one. And so I thought, I'm going to hire a local guide. I did it, and when I got down there, the guy says, here's my boat. Literally, it was a handmade boat that size. I'm like, the fish is going to be this big. And so we went out into the deep ocean. We were several miles off coast. He had a little motor on there, and the motor started sputtering when we got out a long ways. And pretty soon, the motor just died. And I'm like, what do we do now? And he says, well, usually I have a CB and we can call for help, but I forgot it today. Great, so what do we do? And he says, well, I see an island way off over there. And he says, I'm pretty sure it's an island that has a resort on it. I'll just row over there. We spent the whole day rowing to that island to get help. I didn't get to put a line in the water. Guess how many groupers I've caught in my life? And you know why? You got to put a line in the water. I mean, Pastor Joel, he told you he's never caught a fish. So I asked him yesterday, I said, how long have you actually fished? He said, well, I went twice. Did you fish long? No. I said, Joel, if you ever want to catch a fish, you got to put a line in the water. And for some of us, the tension of what we're talking about, Jesus said, you'll fish for people. There's something, if you're a follower of Jesus, if you've made that decision, you're like, I want to be a part of that mission. But there's so many things in our lives that keeps us, whether it's fear or we've been rejected once, had a bad day fishing, and we're like, I just don't put a line in the water. And we will never live out Jesus' mission unless we're willing to put a line in the water. And I want to show you one very simple way that Jesus teaches us to put a line in the water. And if you're new with this and you say, well, you're looking at me as fish, no. Jesus used this just to show Peter that we're part of his mission of going into all the world and sharing the good news. So how do we do that? What does that look like for us? Because here's what Jesus said. Let's read it together. Don't be afraid. From now on, you'll be fishing for people. And I think it's so interesting that Jesus started with, don't be afraid. Because I hear that over and over as a pastor from people. I want to share my faith. I know I have family members. I have loved ones. I have people at work that I want to share my faith with. I want them to know Jesus. That's what they need. But I'm afraid. And Jesus gave us just a simple plan for sharing his love with others. You may deal with that tension in your life. There's a lot of reasons we feel the tension of not sharing our faith or not really leading somebody to Jesus. But the number one reason is usually fear. Fear for whatever reason. And Jesus said, don't be afraid. Here's what I have for you. And he invites us into his mission. So today, I just want to walk through this one way that we get a line in the water. I will serve my one. Everybody say serve. Let's say it together, the whole thing. I will serve my one. Serving is such a simple way to do what Jesus has called us to do. It's amazing how this works. It's getting that line in the water and just saying, I love you. Why are you serving me? I love you. And by the way, that works both directions. Sometimes I cannot get people to connect as I serve them, and so I'll ask them to serve me. I have a project, and I said, would you come help me? And it is amazing how that opens up. the relationship. I will serve my one. Now, we have in this series said, find one person in your life that you can just pour into. Based on Jesus said that the good shepherd leaves the 99 when there's one lost sheep. Just find one. Often I'll talk to Christians and they'll say, oh, I want to change the world. And I'm like, well, how many people have you led to Jesus? Well, nobody. And I'm like, start with one. Don't try to be Billy Graham. Anybody know who Billy Graham was? Yeah, don't try to be Billy Graham right off the bat. You start with one. Find out who that one is in your life. Now, I'm going to take you to the passage that we're going to live in today. It's found in Mark chapter 9. So if you have your Bibles, I just want to read this to you as an overview of what's going on here. And then we're just going to walk through this step by step where Jesus tells us about serving for reaching people. This is found in Mark chapter 9, verse 33. They arrived at Capernaum. They're actually coming back to Capernaum was Peter's house. And they often came back. That was kind of one of Jesus' headquarters. They would stay at Peter's house there in Capernaum. And they settled in a house. Jesus asked his disciples, what were you discussing on the road? But they didn't answer. Now, if you back up, the context of this is, as they're walking to Capernaum, Jesus had just told them before they took the journey about his death. He said, here's what's going to happen. Go back and read it twice in the previous chapters. He's talked about his death and the price he would pay for our sin. He talked about that's the way he was going to establish his kingdom. But on the way, he's just had that conversation, and on the way to Capernaum, now what they're talking about is something very different. They're embarrassed about it. I mean, let me tell you, if I told you today, hey, I'm dying, and I know it, and it's imminent, and all you did was come up to me and talk about yourself and how great you want to be, I think that's kind of weird. I mean, if I'm willing to share that with you, right? But they didn't answer because they had been arguing about which of them was the greatest. Okay, Jesus says, I'm going to die. Well, we want to know who's going to be great in your kingdom, Lord. He sat down, he called the 12 disciples over to him, and he said, whoever wants to be first must take last place and be the servant of everyone else. Jesus knew what they were talking about. They did not tell him the conversation, but Jesus still deals with what they were arguing about. And there's something there to this. We need to know this. God knows our thoughts. He knows what you're feeling. If you say, Jeff, I want to reach people. I want to be part of the mission of Jesus, but I'm afraid. Or you may have thoughts about that person. I don't know if you're like this, but Jesus has put people in my life to share my faith with. And I'm like, they don't deserve his love. Anybody ever feel like that? Oh, you guys are so holy, right? You should be up here teaching. Then in verse 36, he says, then he put a little child among them, taking the child in his arms. So here's what Jesus is doing. He just taught them this amazing lesson. And now he illustrates it by putting a child in his arms. He said to them, anyone who welcomes a little child like this on my behalf welcomes me. Remember, at one point Jesus said, we're to have faith like a little child. And anyone who welcomes me, not only me welcomes me, but also my Father who sent me. Boy, the disciples get this amazing life lesson about being great in the kingdom. And if you notice in there, Jesus didn't say, hey, that's a bad desire. What he said was, you want to be great in the kingdom? Here's how you do it. Servant of all. And there's no greater thing we could do in the kingdom than to join in Jesus' mission and reach the world with the gospel. Our world, my little world. How do I do that? We said this earlier. I will serve my one. Say it with me again. I will serve my one. I was just thinking this week of some thoughts, and I often write down my own thoughts, and sometimes they surprise me. You ever have that happen in your life? And I thought I'd share this one with you. But serving is a path to love. Through our acts of kindness, sacrifice, and compassion, we open our hearts and create bonds that transcend words. So that's why we see that happening in our lives. So that I would serve my one. I want to do that. Now, I want to take a few minutes and look at these few verses, this incredible moment in Jesus' life with the disciples. And as he gives this amazing teaching, And if you're a leader here, if you're a manager, if you own a business, boy, you got to get a hold of this one. Because he said, you want to be great, be the servant of all. Serving is so important. If you're a parent, you want to be a great parent, got to learn this. I'm excited we have this parenting seminar coming up because we're going to be doing a series. I think our next series is called Fearless Families. Anybody excited about that? Man, we've been studying. I'm preparing for that. I can't wait. And we got some exciting things coming up, by the way. In the fall, we're doing a series called Masterpiece. We're looking at the book of Ephesians. I just finished a book on it to go along with it. I'm so excited for where God's leading us over the next few months. But when we talk about this, serving, man, in our families, if we want successful marriages, being a servant of all, and if we're going to reach the lost for Christ, and some of you say, well, that's me. Yeah, we want to serve you. It's not out of trying to get to manipulate you. It's trying to love you and share the love of Jesus. We feel so called to his mission. Now, part of what I want to do today is to help you see that we're doing this and training this way, not only here for adults, but for our kids as well. Did y'all know we do something called One Voice around here? It's just our strategy. So the kids and the youth, they learn at the same thing we're learning, but at an age-appropriate level for them. So today, I want to introduce you to one of the guys who's always over there teaching. I'm going to interview him. But first, I want you to see, you always see our video clips, like our introductions and stuff. I want you to see a little bit of what they see over there. Here's one of their video clips.
You know, I think I'm getting pretty good at this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, watch this technique. See? Flawless.
I suppose, but you haven't even caught one fish yet.
Well, you know, that sounds like the lake's problem. We're clearly in the wrong spot.
This is the best spot in the whole lake. I'll prove it to you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I'm gonna catch more fish and be the best fisherman out here.
Well, not before me. I brought the secret weapon.
What do you mean, secret weapon?
I can't tell you, or it wouldn't be a secret. Now, would it?
Huh, fine. Hey, you're cheating!
No, I'm not.
You can't use extra bait. That won't make you the best fisherman.
Well, I think the best fisherman uses all of his resources to catch the most fish. I mean, look, you can't prove anything.
There's worms in your hair.
Oh, get off. Oh, get off. Oh.
Now you look like a super professional fisherman.
Hey, I'm just trying harder than you out here.
Fine, you want to see how hard I'll try?
I'm not so sure anymore.
Hold that. What? Cannonball!
Wait, you're gonna rock the boat.
Ah, it works. See? I got one. Now I'll be the best fisherman.
Hey, that's only because they were drawn to my bait. Hey, get back here. Uh-oh.
Swim!
Right about now, how many of you want to see how all that ends, right? Well, you don't get to, I'm sorry. Unless you go volunteer and be part of the team transforming kids' lives. But you can see, did you notice in there a couple things? First of all, they started out with this tension of it's a competition, it's not. That, hey, we're all in this together. And the kids are really learning this about how we serve people to reach them for Jesus and to live in these healthy relationships. So I want to introduce you to my friend. He's one of our most faithful volunteers in our children's area. This is Steve. Steve, are you here?
Hi, Jeff. Hi, everyone.
Everybody welcome Steve. Yeah. I see you did your hair just for us today, Steve. That's great. I love it. So, Steve, what do you like about serving over in the kids' area and serving our kids' ministry?
Oh, it's just so wonderful because you get to see all the kids' lives transformed and helping the teachers in the classroom, being able to help the kids really engage with the Bible and learn about Jesus in ways that they understand.
Well, I love it. See, if my hair was like that, I'd flop it around too, man. I love That's great, Steve. I want to thank you for your faithfulness. And we are seeing kids' lives transformed every week Thank you. What do you do over there? Most of the time, you're sharing Bible stories, right?
That's right. So the way that the kids class works is they'll go into their class and they do a bit of worship just like in here. And then after that, they get to watch a short video. And it usually has a fun little skit like what you just saw to help illustrate a lesson. My job is that I usually am helping with reading the Bible stories to the kids in those videos. And after that, the teachers will help them with more hands-on learning like crafts and things.
Oh, I love that. Do you ever sit and listen to me, Steve?
Sometimes.
Close your mouth, Steve. You're drooling a little bit there. Yeah. Steve, we appreciate it. And it's so cool to see kids' lives transformed for Jesus. And that's really what we've been talking about in the series Cast. And I did watch your story on video. You went on a fishing trip with your grandpa, and he taught you a great lesson about what we're learning. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, that's right. So the video that you saw was for our elementary age students. I do the early childhood videos, and in those, I got to go on a fishing trip with my grandpa. During our fishing trip, I was saying that I wanted to be the best fisherman and keep all the fish for myself. But my grandpa taught me that we ought to serve, and he told me that we should give our fish to people who needed food. And so that's how I got to learn our one thing for the week, which we learned back there, which is I will serve.
Oh, you think everybody here could say that with you?
I sure do. Everyone say, I will serve. Ready?
I will serve. That's pretty great, Steve. So your story took what Kyle and Nikki were wrestling with about being the best fisherman to saying, no, we're doing this to serve. And that's really what Jesus has called us to, right?
That's right.
Well, thank you again for doing this with the kids on a regular basis. We so appreciate it, and we're so supportive of all you do. Everybody, thanks Steve for being here. Bye, Steve.
Bye.
All right, so now you got to meet Steve, right? And we're so passionate about reaching our kids, and our kids are learning the same thing. So what does that look like in our life, though? And I know some of you right away, you're like, oh, that was so childish. And what I would say to you is Jesus said childlike faith. And there's the other group of you who are going, can't Steve do the rest of the message? I know. But they're learning, if you're a parent or a grandparent, your kids are learning about the same principle here, about serving others. It's how we get a line in the water. It's how we get a pathway to an open door in relationship. So there are a couple questions I want to challenge you to ask yourself that really the disciples dealt with here in these few moments. And the first one is this. You need to ask yourself, if I'm going to serve my one, what am I embarrassed to talk with Jesus about? Because usually there's things going on in our life that's keeping us from sharing our faith. Like the disciples were saying, well, what we're talking about is who's going to be the greatest. What's my position? Who's going to hear me? Who's going to see me? What's in it for me? Jesus knows what we're talking about. And usually when we hear a message like this, we're like, oh, I don't want the Lord to know that I'm thinking that. He knows. Let's talk about it with him. Jesus said, don't be afraid anymore. From now on, you'll be fishing for people. Am I willing to talk about my fear of sharing my faith, of reaching and serving someone? Here's what Jesus said, and I just highlighted because we've already read this. But the disciples, when Jesus said, what were you talking about? Remember, he's just told them he's going to die. He's going to give his life on the cross. What were you talking about? They were talking about being great in the kingdom. They didn't answer him. This is what we do often. We go quiet. Why didn't you do what I wanted you to do and share your faith with theirs? Serve that person. Well, why? Because they were arguing, and they knew this, they were on the wrong track here. They're arguing about who's going to be the greatest. What's my place? What's in it for me? We become so worldly focused rather than saying, I'm really in this to be a part of the mission of Jesus. Jesus knows our thoughts. Ask that question, Lord, what am I afraid to talk to you about? Sometimes I need the prompting of God's Spirit in me to say, there's some issues we need to talk about. Especially when it comes to sharing my faith, reaching that one person, serving others. And we know that Jesus already knows our thoughts, so we might as well be honest with him, because in another place in Luke, this very same moment, it says, Jesus knew their thoughts. Would you read that with me? Jesus knew their thoughts. I mean, right now, there's some things, I'm like, wow, Lord, you know my thoughts. Well, we might as well be honest with him. Because he doesn't know our thoughts and go, I'm condemning you. He's like, I know your thoughts. I want to transform you to be more like my character, the character of the Father. I want to transform you and empower you to live this out. So even as we're saying this, when you think about if you're a follower of Jesus and you say, there's one person I really know that this is my one, what are your thoughts about your one? I mean, I kind of teased earlier, like, they don't deserve it, but those aren't really the thoughts I'm talking about. Is it maybe they'll reject me? Man, I'm afraid of what they'll think about me. Or I become judgmental toward them and I'm really condemning them instead of saying, man, I love you, I care about you. I see those are the thoughts. I need to say, Jesus, change my heart, my mind. And I'm embarrassed when I look at people that way. When I see people through any lens except for the cross of Jesus Christ. And I do. And I know some of you do. I won't ask you because already you threw me under the bus once. That's enough, okay? But Jesus said, I mean, he knows our thoughts. Let's talk about it. And what he wants for us is to grow. And often it's amazing to me in sharing my faith and praying for a one, how much I grow through that process more than I see even in them. And yet God transforms their life. But so often I'm like, Lord, you designed this just for me. So I'm going to ask the question, if I really want to serve my one, I have to ask the question, what am I embarrassed to talk to Jesus about? And one of those for me, maybe it isn't just being a servant. So I'll give you a second question we see with the disciples. What is my attitude? Serve, be served. We lean one or the other. And I would have you raise your hands, but here's what I know. Those of you who it's serving, if you say you raise your hand and then all of a sudden we got to deal with your pride, okay? Because you're like, see, I got this one. And if it's be served, you're not going to raise your hand because you're like me and it's embarrassing. You're like, Jesus is a servant of all. Jesus said he came to serve, not to be served. And somewhere in there, it's like, Lord, help me to point to grow in being a servant like you. And there is a season for both of these. It's not that it's just one or the other. I mean, if you're a parent, hear this. There's a season where you are serving your kids, but there's a season when they serve you. If you're married, there's a season where you should be serving, and we live in that. But there's also a season to be served. And what I know about those of you who are servers, you don't want to be served. Usually in your moment of crisis, you're like, oh no, I got this. Man, you're going to have to get over that pride. Because this is how he's designed us to live as servants of one another. And in doing this, it opens the door, as I wrote a little while ago, of intimacy and relationship and to be all that God wants us to be. Now, if you are, again, I said this earlier, but if you're a leader, you're an owner of a business, you're a manager, the greatest thing you can do at work is be a servant of your employees, of your customers. Jesus said, you want to be great? Be a servant of all. It will change everything about the dynamics of your workplace. So here we are, Mark chapter 9. They wouldn't tell him what he was talking about, what they were talking about, and Jesus says, okay, let's talk about it. He knows what they're talking about already, and he says, whoever wants to be first must take last place. This creates a tension for me. I didn't grow up in a culture saying this. I grew up in a culture that's like, man, I got to do whatever it is to be first, right? I learned early on, they give trophies for first place. We didn't have participation trophies. You know what I'm saying? And be the what? Servant of everyone else. Oh, servant of everywhere. Where do I learn this from, Jesus? Watch me, he says. And he serves. He says, I didn't come to be served, but to serve. And he goes to the cross for us. How does that change my marriage? How does that change my relationship with my kids' parents? Parents, when I start saying, I'm here to serve my kids. And that even pushes against us a little bit, doesn't it? It's like, oh, no, they're going to do what I want them to do. Well, that's discipline. That's a whole part of what we'll be talking about in those seminars. But what we're talking, biblical discipline. But how do I serve them in love? And the most important people that I can disciple, my ones should be not only my spouse, but my kids. What does that look like? And there is a time for both, to serve and be served. And now we serve Jesus. Those are seasons like Ecclesiastes talk about. In Mark chapter 8, we see this. In calling the crowd together, his disciples, he said, then calling the crowd to join his disciples, he said, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must, what? Give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. Man, give up my own way? This is getting a line in the water. You see, if I want to develop relationship further, I get a line in the water by serving, giving up my way and serving, being like Jesus. I have to tell you, in my marriage, my wife leans toward the serve side. She's just a natural server. I lean toward the be served side. So that works perfect, I thought, when we got married. We got married, I'm like, this is great. She serves, I'm being served. But the season for both was, man, God began to transform my life as well as her. There's times when I need to serve her, and I'm like, let me serve you. You need this right now. I'm not great. I think she's better at serving than I am, and I'm better at being served than she is because that's our natural bent. But somewhere in there is this healthy intimacy and relationship, and there's a season for both. And God's gifted us in different ways, but he always comes back to, but I want to transform you to be like Jesus. Jesus said, I didn't come to be served, but to serve. And when I serve, I get a line in the water. That person who has closed the door to me the most, who doesn't want to talk about God at all, how do I begin to reach them for Jesus? Get a line in the water by serving them. How can I serve them? Lord, show me how. And Jesus gives us the example. He is our example. He says great leadership, this is what he's telling us here, is defined by serving others, not using others. Sometimes I'll hear leaders say, I still have a few people on my team I haven't used yet. And I'm like, that's a problem. You need to think in terms of, I have a few people on my team I haven't served yet. Because that's great leadership. Great leaders serve. Jesus was the greatest leader of all time. Matthew chapter 9, let me go back with this. Because now Jesus, he's taught us this incredible lesson. If you want to be great in the kingdom, be the servant of all. Say it with me. Servant of all. If you want to be great in the kingdom, be a servant of all. And now he's going to illustrate it. He says, anyone who welcomes a little child like this on my behalf, he brings the child up, welcomes me. Anyone who welcomes me welcomes not only me, but also welcomes the Father. Now he starts talking about, illustrating this, and serving somebody in their community, in his culture, that would have been thought of as less than human. I mean, kids were not treated. They were treated like property. They were not valued, and sometimes the pendulum swings the other way where we elevate them to be God, and that's not it either. That we're instead elevating them to the point of saying, man, this is God's creation, and he wants us to disciple them. But as a church, we're passionate about this, partnering with you as parents and grandparents to see this happen. So Jesus' illustration here is he's elevating these kids, and he's challenging us. He's already challenged the disciples to have this childlike faith. How do we do this? To serve like that. To serve those who may never be able to give back to us. That's when serving really catches on and changes life. That's where you really get a line in the water, when it's not because you can give back to me, but I'm just here to serve. And I love that about kids. Here's the next step I want for you. I want you to, just this week, I want to challenge you. I will serve my one this week freely. Everybody say freely. See, if it's somebody that can give in return, and you're like, that's why I'm serving them, that's not what we're talking about here. You're serving those that you're just like, man, I don't need anything in return. I'm here because I want to share the love of Jesus with you. I want to serve you, to be the hands and feet of Jesus without expecting or demanding anything in return. I was thinking this week and kind of leaning into this, especially thinking as a parent of serving, how we serve our kids and how important that is. And my wife is, I love Kathy, and I don't know if you know, she was the one up here singing today, if you don't know Kathy. And I loved watching her sing because that's how I first fell in love with her. She was traveling through, I was a youth pastor, and she was traveling through, and she was singing on stage, and I'm like, ooh. And after they got done singing, I was supposed to help their group set up housing. So she about hit me with a door opening from the fellowship hall. We used to have those, and about hit me with the door and said, do you know where I can find Jeff Love? And I looked in those eyes. I'm like, oh, baby. I'm like, I'm Jeff Love. I'm like, why don't you come down to my office and I'll help you out. She came down to my office, and I'll never forget the conversation because we're doing all this stuff. And finally, I'm like, so are you married? And here was her response. I'll never forget it. She goes, no, and I don't want to be. And my thought was, this woman wants to be married. And that's how it all began. I've been so blessed in my life to have Kathy. And we are just in so much unity about what we've done in ministry over the years. But one of the things that I love about her and her serving attitude, and she's helped me grow in this so much and still is. But when it came, she was a kindergarten teacher. And when it came time we had kids, she felt like she wanted to serve our kids by just pouring life into them. And I'm not saying this is for everybody. I mean, if you're not good with your kids, get somebody else to teach them. But she said, I'm going to teach our kids and pour life into them. And she served our kids and changed their lives over the years. And parents, we all are called to serve our kids in a way that points them to Jesus. I mean, we have 3 of our kids that are involved in ministry. That's their life. And I look to her, and sometimes she'll wrestle with, and I get this, and she wrestles with, yeah, but maybe I didn't earn enough money, or I didn't do this, or I didn't, but you did the most important thing. You served. You're the greatest here in this. And now I see it in her life, because even now she's doing some other things for work and really fulfilled in what she was doing. But now we have a grandson that is living here, and she's just pouring her life into little James. We have 5 grandkids, but only one that lives here. Guess who gets the most of our attention? I mean, proximity is important for a relationship. And there are some days I get home, Kathy's like, oh, but I didn't get to do this and this. She sells my paintings. She's like, I didn't get to list your paintings, whatever. It's like, yeah, but you're doing the most important thing. You're serving this little boy who, by the way, everybody in the family knows she's the favorite already. Even mom and dad sometimes are going, he loves her more than us. Why does it seem like that? Because she's serving him. Listen, when we choose to serve our one, when we choose to serve others around us, it opens the door for us to be the hands and feet of Jesus. It changes lives. But what has to go away is what we saw right here in the disciples. But Lord, if I do that, I won't be great here, or I won't have this, or I won't have that title, or I won't drive that car. And he's like, yeah, if you want to be great in the kingdom, you become servant of all. Do you see how much it has to deal with my heart and cutting out my selfishness to be selfless like Jesus? To live for eternity instead of for the moment here on earth. If you're a follower of Jesus, that's what he's called us to. I will serve my one. Say it with me again. I will serve my one. If I could do and choose my own life and do it all over, if it were, and I said, okay, God, I'll do ministry, but if I could do it all over again and I had the gifting to serve in anywhere, I would serve to choose in children's ministry, and I'll tell you why. And this is what I honor about my wife. Not only is she singing, but usually she's back there teaching the kids. Because statistics show us that if you don't give your life to Jesus before the age of 13, 85% of people who never did that never will. Do you know how discouraging that is for me as a pastor to adults? That's so discouraging. And that's why kids ministry is so important around here. Because we know that. Now, often they'll drift, but if they've done that, they've made a decision, the Spirit of God just keeps coming back to them, and they will often come back to it. Overwhelmingly, they'll come back to it. But if their heart never got touched before the age of 13, only 15% will make that decision. Boy, as a church, I'm telling you, there's no greater place. There's always places to serve. There's no greater place to serve than there. Now, if that's not your gifting, you don't want to do that. You wouldn't want me serving your kids based on my gifts. You would say, let's find another church. It's just not my thing, and it would make me so nervous. I could stand in front of 10,000 adults and teach, but Kathy, I've been back there at times when she says, hey, can you watch my classroom just for a couple minutes so I can go to the bathroom? I'm like, no, I'm yelling across the hall, somebody come in here and help, you know? You don't want that. But man, we need to be praying for our one. And as a church to realize how important it is that we pour into this next generation. And how do we get the line in the water? Serve. If you're saying, I don't know how to open that door, crack that door, serve. If you want to be great in the kingdom, be the servant of all. Father, thank you for this moment, Jesus, where you were with the disciples and you gave us this incredible teaching about life, about sharing our faith, about healthy relationships. I wonder, Lord, where you're speaking to people right now, that they're struggling in a relationship or struggling with reaching someone, or even just walking in a healthy relationship with their spouse, their kids, their older parents, their neighbors. Would you help us to grab a hold of this biblical truth? If you want to be great in the kingdom, be a servant of all. Would you transform our hearts to be servers, Jesus like you? And Lord, even as I say that, I know there are some people who are in a crisis right now listening to my voice that don't want to be served. Would you break through their pride and help them to open the door to let us, the church, the body of believers, serve them right now? Now, Lord, I lift up that one to you that we all have. This week, open our eyes, our hearts to serve them. To serve them in such a way that we're just sharing your love. We're just being your hands and feet. No matter what the results are, just getting a line in the water and leave the results to you. Now, as we're praying, if you're not a follower of Jesus, that's where it begins for you. And some of you, that's why you're here. Somebody loves you and cares about you and invites you. Just pray this prayer. Say, Lord, I want to begin this journey with you. I see you're pursuing me. I'm not here by an accident. I ask you to forgive my sin. I ask you to help me to begin a right relationship with you. And from this moment on, I want to pursue what it means to serve like you. In Jesus' name, amen.